Okay, let's jump into the tag. Everybody, I'm here with Mo, and we're going to be doing the spring cleaning book tag today. So, the first question is the struggle of getting started, a book or series you struggle to begin because of its size. And what do you want to give your answer first? And then I'll go ahead and give mine.
Sure. Okay, so my answer is The Ranger's Apprentice books by John Flanagan. I've heard so much about them and that they're so good, but for some reason I just have such a hard time starting them. I still haven't actually started them, but I want to. So that's on my to read list.
Okay, my answer would probably be The Keeper of the Lost Cities by Shannon Messenger. Like, it's a great series. I read it
Yes.
twice, and I love it a lot. But there are a lot of books in it, and I mean, just because it's so long, I always go like, oh, even though I want to start rereading it, I'm always like, well, this is a pretty long series, and I kind of dread it just a little bit, but it's worth it
Yes.
when I get through it.
Yeah, once you get started, it's like, oh, this is great.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. All right. So the next question is cleaning out the closet, a book or series you want to unhaul.
So I actually don't own this book, but if I did own it, I would have thrown it away a long time ago. It's called The Raft, and it's by S.A. Bodine, I think is how you say that name. It's weird. It's like it starts out with a cool premise, and then it just like gets into like ghosts and like this chick, this like the lady who's in it, she's just like hallucinating all this stuff, but you don't really know what's real and what's not. And then she ends up like killing somebody. It's weird. It's not a good book.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, not my favorite.
Strange. Yeah. Books like that are the worst. And you're like, oh, it might be cool, but then it turns out not being cool. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah. So, honestly, I thought about this question a lot. And I mean, I feel like when I get books that I don't like or like have bad content in them that I read and I'm like, oh, that's not good, we donate them instantly.
Yeah.
So I don't have anything currently on my shelves that I would unhaul if I could, because all the books I have right now, I have read them before and I know that they're good in terms of content. And so I keep them there. And so, yeah, any books that we find that have like questionable, like sketchy content, we just like donate them
Get rid of
instantly.
them.
So I don't have anything currently that I would unhaul. On to question number 3. So, opening the window and letting in fresh air, a book that was refreshing.
I picked this one. It's called Killers of the Flower Moon. It's by David Grann. It's the story of the American Osage Indians who lived in Oklahoma, and it's a true story, historical. It's a historical book, and usually this is kind of ironic because I just said that I got rid of the raft, or I would get rid of the raft because it was bad. But this one is like historical, about how the Osage Indians started getting murdered for their head rights. And it's a really good book, in terms of like North American Indian struggles and stuff like that. And it was really interesting how the whole story, like how the author wrote it, it's very refreshing of like the way he weaves the story together and weaves the historical parts into it. It's like it's really good. I really like it.
Yeah.
So usually not
Neat.
the kind of book I would read, but it was definitely good. And he handles the gory parts in a very mature and like not super disgusting way, I guess, if that makes sense.
Okay, great. So my answer for this question is The Captive Maiden by Melanie Dickerson. This book, it's like my go-to if I'm like, I don't know, feeling sad or whatever, because it just like picks you right up because it's a retelling of Cinderella, yeah, like 1500s in Germany. So I don't know, it's just a really sweet story and a really sweet retelling. And so, I mean, I just read that when I like need a nice, fluffy, sweet thing to read. I don't want to read anything like super intensely paced or full of action that
Uh-huh.
keeps you on the edge of your seat or up at night. So I just read that if I need something like sweet and fluffy to read. So yeah,
Uh-huh.
that is my refreshing book. All right. On to question number 4. So this question is washing out the sheets, a scene you wish you could rewrite.
So for me, the scene in Little Women, by Louis May Alcott, who writes that book. And it's the scene where the one girl is writing a book and her younger sister is mad at her, so she throws it in the fire and burns it. And it just breaks my heart, and I hate it so much because I've written stories of my own, and just to write a 1,000 word story takes so much time and thought, and like to write a book. And if you like think about it, that book was like a nice big sized book, and she just threw it away and burnt it. And I do not like that scene at all, and I would totally rewrite it if I could.
Oh man, yeah, that scene is, yeah. I thought about this one also long and hard too, and I feel like even though there are scenes in books that I definitely don't like, and I feel like I could rewrite them if I could. I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't want to rewrite a scene just for the sake of like keeping, I don't know if this makes sense. If I changed something about the book, it would like, I don't know, just change the way the author intended it to be. And even if I didn't like it, I feel like, yeah, just mess it up in some way. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but I wouldn't want to rewrite a scene because I feel like that would be just taking away something from the book and how it was meant to be. The next question number 5, is throwing out unnecessary knickknacks, a book in a series you didn't think was necessary.
My answer for this one is, I actually have two. There's one Keeper of the Lost Cities book, and I don't know which one it was, but the first time I read the series, I was like, in this book, all we're doing is sitting around waiting and like talking about drama. And don't get me wrong, I love Keeper of the Lost Cities, but I can't exactly remember which book it was, but it was one in the middle, and I was just like, what's the point of this book? We're just like no, I didn't feel like it advanced the story very far, and it was like super thick, and all it talked about was how Sophie, I guess spoiler alert, like attacked the bad guys, but the good guys didn't want to. They just wanted to sit around in their like hideout and wait for the bad guys to come to them. And I don't know, I didn't really like that book very much. It just kind of felt like pointless to me. And then another one, which is not a book in a series, but it is a book. It's called Most Wanted, and it's by Kate Thompson. And it looked super interesting, and the premise was super interesting, but the way the book was written was just like, what in the world? And it was like unnecessary. It was like a little kid's book. Like it had like the words were really big and like spread out. And I read it in about 30 minutes. Talked super gorily about how this one Roman emperor just like killed people in like super gory ways, and I was like, what the heck, this is freaking me out, and I'm like 17. So one was one I just was like, this is not necessary. And then the ending of the book was just very like boring. I was like, what?
Yeah, that's the worst. Wait, it's actually really funny you mentioned one of the books in Curiosity, because my answer is actually Flashback from that series. And yeah, I think that's probably the book you're referring to. Because I mean, the book is like 700 something pages, I think. And literally like 2/3 of it is just the two main characters like sitting in the hospital, like doing nothing.
Yes.
Okay, some stuff in the book obviously happened that was important to the overall storyline of the series. But I mean, you didn't have to make them spend like 500 out of the 700 page book in the hospital. So yeah, that was, I mean, if I had to eliminate one book from this series, it would be that, just because of all that time wasted. All right, question number 6. Okay, this question is Polishing Doorknobs, a book that had a clean finish.
So for me, I chose The Healer's Apprentice by Melanie Dickinson. That book I read last December, I think, and it was really good.
Alrighty, so my answer for this question is going to be The Prince of Spies by Elizabeth Camden. And this was the last book in her trilogy, the Hope and Glory series. And that series is just so good. I cannot recommend it enough. She blew out of the park with these. And I mean, when she starts with the first like 2 books, like the endings are kind of cliffhanger-ish. Not so much cliffhanger, they just make you want more of like the storyline because you know there's more. But the last book in that series, The Prince of Spies, really just wrapped everything up really nicely. like all the characters got their happy endings that I just love when they do. And so yeah, that was a really satisfying finish to the whole series and just the book in general.
That's cool. Yeah, that's kind of how Healer's Apprentice was. Like the ending was just like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
this is
I know.
exactly how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I just love happy endings. I'm a sucker for those. Okay. All right. Question number 7. Reaching to Dust the Fan, a book that tried too hard to relate a certain message.
I read this book a while ago called Wild River by Rodman Philbrick, I think is how you say his name. And I love survival stories. Like I am a sucker for like the Hatchet book series. Love that book series. And then there's just a couple other survival series and survival books I've read. I just love survival books. And so when I found this one, it was like, oh, this is going to be so good. It was not. It tried way too hard to have that whole like, oh, we don't need anything to survive. But then like I don't know, these kids get lost in Montana, right?
Mhm.
On a rafting trip, and their chaperones get like killed, and then these kids like start turning into wild animals. Like that's the only way I can describe it. They turn into like wild animals, and they just start like attacking each other. And one of them, actually one of the kids, dies in it because he was being like really stupid and like dancing over by a cliff. What in the world? And it just tried too hard to relay the message of like surviving is like difficult. Like I
Yeah.
honestly like the way like Hatchet handles survival. It's like survival is hard, but once you get used to it, like it's basically like really nice because it takes all the like unimportant stuff out of your life and you just have to focus on like what truly is important. And I love
Yeah.
that idea. But this one was just like tribal and I did not like it at all. It was not.
Yeah. Weird. Alrighty. Okay, so my answer for this would be To Best the Boys by Mary Weber. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a good story. I loved it a lot. Like just the writing and everything went really well. Like the author had a real knack for writing that type of book. Yeah, just the action, everything was on point. Okay, just even the title alone, To Best the Boys, like the message is very kind of like, oh, girls can do anything and just as better than boys can. And I'm not saying the message is
Oh.
false per se. It's just
Uh-huh.
that she like in every part of the book, she just tried to like hammer it in. And I mean, like, yes, I do believe that like men and women are equal, but like they have different roles per se. I mean, I don't want to get into like this whole debate right now, but I'm just
Uh-huh.
saying that as she was writing this book and it wasn't like wrong per se. And like I said, it was a good story overall. I enjoyed it. I just feel like the author just like every chance she got was like hammering in the fact that like the girls could like easily beat the boys in this competition and like
Mm.
they could just walk all over them. So yeah, I don't know. That was the only thing that kind of spoiled it. But like I said, it was a really good story and written really well. Yeah, she just hammered it in a bit too much, I want to say.
Yeah.
Last question. So, the tiring yet satisfying finish, a series that was tiring but satisfying to get through.
So I have two series here again. So my first one that I have gotten all the way through is Spy School by Stuart Gibbs. That book series is great because I also love spies. Like I really like action books, honestly. And I love spy books. And this series is really good about these kids who are in a spy school, and it's like unbelievable, but like not to the point where you can't believe it, if that makes sense, like at all. It's like fantastical, but like in a believable way. And I really like that book series. Spy School by Stuart Gibbs. And the second one is Narnia by C.S. Lewis. So I have not read all those books, which is like super terrible, especially like everyone is always like, you have to read the Narnia books. And the thing, I honestly think the reason why I've had such a hard time reading them all is because I've watched the movies beforehand, which is terrible. Oh, it's so bad. But I have this thing about I don't like to watch movies before I read the books because then it just changes what you think of the story. But anyway, so I've read a few of them and I really like the ones that I've read. I just have such a hard time getting another one and starting it for some reason. And I don't
Mhm.
know why, because they're so good. But I've heard a lot about them and I am really excited to get to the last book because I've heard that it ends up being really good. So
Yeah,
those are
yeah.
my
The Narnia
answers.
series is a classic. All right, so my answer for this one would be the Epic Order of the Seven series by Jenny L. Coate. And I reviewed this series before on my channel, but basically the series is about these animals and they like journey through the Bible and like important events of human history. And as cheesy as that sounds, it's actually a really good series, okay? I know it sounds really like childish, like oh, just a bunch of animals going through like the events of the Bible and important events of human history, but it is actually a really good series. And the books are all really long, and there's like I think 8 of them. I'm not sure, quite a few of them, and they're all like 600 pages or more each. Yep, they're all really good. I highly recommend them, but it can be very tiring to get through all of them. I've read the series maybe 2 or 3 times, but each time it's just satisfying to get to the last one. And I mean, even all the books aren't even out yet. There's a new one coming out this year, I think. So, speaking of which, that was the last question in this tag. So, I hope you guys all had fun watching me and Mo do these questions. I will link down below to Mo's blog post, and you guys can go check out her blog. And yeah, I hope you guys have an amazing day and that you enjoyed watching us do this spring cleaning tag. See you guys later.